Welcome back to Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and today I'm glad to be joined by Jordan Freed, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Hedera Hashgraph. Jordan, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Yonah.
All right, so first up, this is my question, but I think also a lot of people's question because people watching this are, interested in blockchain. But Hedera Hashgraph isn't actually a blockchain, right?
So that's right. We do everything a blockchain can do, and then we do a little bit more. But technically, we're not a blockchain. A blockchain is a chain of blocks. We're a graph, a directed acyclic graph. But again, we do everything a blockchain does.
Mm-hmm. And so what does that mean? What differentiates a hash graph from a blockchain? I'm just going to throw out some numbers right here, okay? 10,000 plus transactions per second, 0.0001 US dollars per transaction, and 3 to 5 seconds of finality. That's way better numbers than most or almost all blockchains you see. How is a hash graph different, and how does it work so well?
Yeah, it's a great question. As it turns out, a chain of blocks is a pretty inefficient way to come to consensus. When we talk about all of these distributed networks, what Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Hedera Hashgraph are trying to solve, it's really how can we get all the participants on the network to agree on the state of reality, on the state of account balances. Yonah has this much in his account, Jordan has this much, and have a shared state across all the nodes on the network. Hashgraph is a data, it's based on again, the data structure I mentioned, a directed acyclic graph. It's our way of, in a more efficient way, keeping all the nodes on the network in sync without going into too much technical detail. It's, just far more efficient. We don't have the expensive computational load. It's much more efficient from an energy perspective. You don't need, to plug in directly to the energy grid like a lot of Bitcoin miners do. We don't really have the concept of miners. We're actually a proof of stake network. So we're different in a whole lot of ways. But again, we do what blockchains do in that we come to consensus. It's not probabilistic, in that with Bitcoin, you're waiting for, I don't know how much it is. I haven't sent Bitcoin in a while, but I think it's like 32 confirmations. You wait for all these block confirmations. With Hedera, as you mentioned, you get finality really quick. So it's a really fun user experience when people see it for the first time. I was showing a friend the other day and they're like, wow, I waited an hour to send Bitcoin the other day and my Hbars are here within 5 seconds. So, you can do some really cool things with that. It really opens up a whole new genre of use cases that really didn't fit into the mold of blockchain. So that's been exciting for us.
Right. Well, you just spent, you very easily and quickly summed it up for me in like 2 minutes, the benefits of using a hash graph. How come everyone is not using a hash graph?
It's a great question. I was also having this conversation the other day. There's 6,000, I looked the other day, I think there's 6,400 some coins on CoinMarketCap. And in the industry of ours, and this, you've been covering the industry for a while back at Block TV and elsewhere, there's so much noise. And really it's about cutting through the noise. It's about telling a compelling story for people to pay attention. Our go-to-market has been really unique in that we decided to focus on enterprises. The Hashgraph from a technology perspective is incredibly unique. It's really differentiated, and we could spend an entire conversation just talking about all the technical properties. But I think what's equally unique is that we're governed by some of the world's most relevant and important tech giants, companies like Google, companies like IBM, companies like Boeing. And as a result, Yonah, our go-to-market has been, let's help these companies first and foremost understand how this technology will impact their businesses. And not just how it will impact their businesses, we've convinced them to come and own us. So Hedera Hashgraph is a limited liability company that's not owned by me. It's not owned by Dr. Lehman Baird, the inventor of the Hashgraph algorithm. It's not owned by our CEO, Mance Harmon. I actually have 0% of the cap table. It's owned by 2.54% is the exact number. That's 139th by 39 multi-billion dollar multinational companies. And, some of those that I mentioned. So that's been really unique. I think that because of that go-to-market, a lot of people in crypto who may be playing with, crypto kitties or DeFi apps, they may overlook that because, they're not as interested in what Google's doing with blockchain or what IBM is doing with blockchain. They're more obsessed with finding the next Bitcoin or the next Ethereum. And maybe we've been overlooked to some extent because of that, but we are growing in awareness. We're really proud of what we've achieved. And we continue to make progress.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a really interesting point, that you jump upon. I feel like there's kind of two very different ends for motivations for people who want to get into DLTs. I will say blockchain, but I guess DLTs because that includes you guys as well. There's one who is hey, I want to be totally decentralized. I want to get away from these kind of big players, governments, big corporations. And then there are, on the other end, you have people like you guys where hey, let's lean in to the infrastructure, the trust that these big corporations have already built, and the know-how and the backing. So I think that's very cool. And so my question is, what was the process for Hedera to kind of choose these council members, which are validators essentially, that you spoke about? What are the criteria to make the cut?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the other part about when you choose a council and when you talk about decentralization, and I think this is the problem in our industry, is very few projects have thought through how their networks will be governed. And that's a really important consideration, because when you're talking about building the future of the decentralized internet, you got to be thinking about the year, as much as we're thinking about the year 2020, and boy, has it been a year, you will really want to be thinking about the year 2120, right? You want to be thinking about 100 years from now. How do these networks stand the test of time? How do they exist? And I think, our founders have, to their credit, they really set out with this mandate of how would we build 100+ year organization? How can we make sure long after all of us are gone that Hedera Hashgraph continues to operate? So we've got this really cool concept of a membership committee that sets objective criteria. Our founding governing council members help form that membership committee, and they set objective market criteria that guides me and my team as we go out and we approach these organizations. What's cool is I'm not unilaterally picking council members. I have to get council members. I have to get buy-in that these companies belong on the council. Of course, our community is not going to be happy if we bring a certain type of company, or it's not large enough, or it's not trusted enough. Our network won't be trusted if our council members collude. So we've opted to do two things that I think you'll find really unique. One, our council members are diverse by geography. We wanted to get council members from South America, and we did. We got Magazine Luiza. They're like Alibaba and Amazon of South America. They're the largest 900 retail locations, like Best Buy locations, as well as one of the biggest e-commerce platforms in Brazil. So we've got representation there. We've got IBM and Google, as I mentioned, from the United States. We have DLA Piper, which is a large European presence and Asia presence, one of the largest global law firms in the world. We have LG Electronics from Korea. So we wanted global distribution, so everyone's spread across and everyone feels that they are somewhat represented. Their geographies are represented on the council. And we wanted diversification by industry. So we have telecom companies in the form of Deutsche Telekom and Tata Communications, but we also have a law firm, and we have an e-commerce company. We have Nomura from financial services. So it really has become this immense, it's a living, breathing organization. What's funny is I report to them. So while I actively have recruited them all, they're now my bosses, which has been a really interesting work dynamic, because I really serve at the pleasure. It's maybe cliche to say, I serve at the pleasure of the council. The council, decides who's in my role and who's on my team. So that's been fun.
But it's so funny when you mention, council members and discuss this. Let me go take it up with the council. I think of like Star Wars, and is there like holograms in everyone's seats where you guys discuss this? But like, seriously, that's my question. Where's I understand that the voting could be happening on the actual system, but where's the conversation and the discussion happening? Is that happening off the grid?
So prior to COVID, we're all locked down. I'm in my guest bedroom at home here. Prior to all of this, we actually met in person every quarter. It was a blast. I really enjoyed it. Our first meeting was in Seoul, South Korea. And again, our thinking was every quarter will meet somewhere different. And it was amazing to meet all of these incredible leaders, and in some cases, really senior leaders of these huge behemoth organizations. I'm talking about senior vice presidents that report up to the CEOs and the boards of directors of these multi-billion-dollar multinationals coming to sit with us and talk strategy, how we're going to generate network effects, how Hedera becomes this de facto enterprise network. So we did sit in rooms face to face. That's how we formed the organization. And there are some great photos and some great tweets from, all of us is this really happening? For so long, it was such an idea. So it did kind of feel Star Wars intergalactic-esque, all of these special delegations coming in from Germany, coming in from India, coming in from America, from Boeing, coming to sit at a table and have these conversations. And then since we had meetings in London, that was a subsequent council meeting, and we had a meeting in New York City, and then COVID happened. So now our meetings are on Zoom. But they still govern. And now it's like this, like how you and I are talking, and important decisions will be brought to them. You mentioned our fees, that 0.001 cost, that gets decided by them. So there's a pricing committee and they decide all of that. So I think what's really different here is, instead of trusting a bunch of developers, and by the way, I love crypto. I love the blockchain ecosystem. So I don't mean to bash it, but it's not well thought out that a group of devs in mom and dad's basement, hacking away at some of these decentralized networks, are deciding and making important decisions that will affect infrastructure that in some cases manages tens of billions of dollars in value. If you really want to bring enterprises to the table where they adopt this thing, and I don't mean proof of concepts, Yonah, I mean truly deployed, game-changing applications that are going to attract global supply chains or really solve massive problems in our world, you are going to need properly governed platforms. So I like to think that Hedera, we're sort of a bridge between the state of crypto, the 2017 to 2020 state of crypto, and the important world of enterprise. We have invited some of, I think, the most important companies of our lifetimes into this space, and they're our partners in helping us deliver on our vision and on our promise.
Very nice. Burn mic drop. Now, don't worry. And I don't think anyone's going to come after you for that. You say it very eloquently and nicely.
I appreciate it.
I'm a neutral bystander. I have no skin in the game. My question is this, though. You mentioned that you're getting all these huge organizations, and high level players in them. What was your pitch? I understand that they're going to have the ability to sit on a council to make decisions, but are you offering them use cases, saying, hey, this will also help somehow your company, and attach that question? You mentioned that you're going across geographies and across different industries. Is there a use case that you're able to go to for each of these industries?
Yeah. So first, I got to let you know that the magic behind Hedera is we have some incredible people. I really can't take all the credit. My team is unbelievable. I've got guys like Azim Malik, who I was able to pull previous to Hedera. He spent some time at a company called Digital Asset. He was also in corporate development at IBM and worked in IBM blockchain. So these people know how to talk to enterprises. And with that team, we are able to go to each of these enterprises. There isn't a template pitch. It's not like there's a join the council deck and it's a standard static deck that you send and you just spray and pray and get council members. Doesn't work that way. It always starts with finding an internal champion. We typically find an internal champion in the organization, and you'd be surprised who these internal champions are. It's typically someone who really takes an interest in our ecosystem, probably saw you in some of your interviews at Block TV and, watches some of your content, maybe has some crypto themselves, but really wants their organization to embrace this imminent change happening in the world of technology and tries to champion, hey, what's our blockchain strategy inside? They then bring us in. We find those individuals and we do start elevating those conversations quickly. At first you're talking to middle management, then you're talking to senior vice presidents. And in some cases we go directly to CIOs. We've talked to CEOs, which is, crazy. No joke. They fly into conferences on private jets and we get 30 minutes of their time to make our pitch. And that's, for someone who works in business development, this is like the pinnacle of my career, to get to sit down with a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar multinational. It's amazing to even get that time and to be able to pitch. And I know everyone on my team enjoys that. You get to close, you get to try to close these relationships, but it is about making a bespoke case. How is this technology, how is Hedera Hashgraph going to disrupt your business? And why should you care? Why should you govern this? Why should you send someone every quarter to come to a meeting with me and our team to talk about how this is going to disrupt their businesses? That's fun. That's fun to do. Those are fun conversations to have. But it has to do with one, I think if there were a template, it would work like this, Yonah. One, you convince them how they're going to use it. And then two, you convince them that if they're going to use it to the extent that the frame you just painted for them, if you're going to use it to that extent, you might as well govern it. You might as well become a decision maker. Here's how you and I are protected as users of the network as well, though. Everyone's term limited. no one gets to stay forever, right? I mean, if in that mindset, it's sort of like a congressman. Although some of them serve for really long periods of time, but it's like you get 2 consecutive 3-year terms, and then our council members are replaced by fresh.
A president, very close to a president.
A president.
At most 2 to 4 year terms.
Yes.
And is that hard coded into the protocol?
So it's less hard coded to the protocol and more it's part of the corporate bylaws of how our organization operates. So again, we operate as this limited liability company domiciled in Delaware. The reason for that structure, it's structured as a for-profit company, but we sort of operate like a non-for-profit in the sense that our North Star is not to make money as Hedera Hashgraph. Our council members don't make money by participation in the network. But we structured that in a certain way. And in the bylaws of that limited liability company, you own a piece of the cap table for as long as you're a member of it. You can only be a member for up to 6 years. And then your membership interest transfers to someone else.
Mm-hmm. So essentially this LLP, which the organizations, these big companies are not a part of that, right? They sign on. And so they're stuck to these bylaws of the LLP.
Yeah, they are owners of that LLC, and while they are members of this limited liability company, they're bound by those bylaws. So it is a tremendous legal process. I mean, it's not just the value proposition. Once we get buy-in from those guys, obviously they say, hey, I need you to get on the phone with my lawyers. And then these are some lawyers that come in and say, whoa, you want us to do what? You want us to run a node on a public network with a cryptocurrency and govern this thing? And that can be, those are 3, 4, 5 month processes. Not to freak you out from this, it does take a long time to recruit a multi-billion-dollar multinational company to come govern a blockchain network and a cryptocurrency. I imagine, David Marcus over at Libra and some of the others in the ecosystem have, experienced some of that. But we've had great success. And with every new council member, I'll tell you, Yonah, now, looking back 3 years, when we started, I thought this was going to be impossible. When I saw what was in our white paper and what Dr. Baird wanted us to go do, I'm like, you're kidding, right? We got to go convince the Googles, IBMs, Boeings of the world that they should come join us. That's going to be really hard. But now that we have them, it's so much less risky for the next company. Everyone's primary concern was reputation. I don't want to be called before Congress to testify in the way that those Libra guys had to do the other a couple months ago. So now that we have these big names, for those joining now, for some of the recent members, for LG to join, it was so much less risk adverse because there's safety in numbers. We already have big names and that exists already.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we look at blockchains historically with enterprises, most of the use cases with enterprises have been supply chain stuff, things of that nature. When you were going, let's say you mentioned a bunch of companies, Google, IBM, LG, are they currently using the Hashgraph, the Hedera Hashgraph for actual use cases?
So I have to be careful in what I say here because of pretty intense non-disclosure agreements. And I've got to stay in compliance with that. So what I can say is they're all running infrastructure. Part of becoming a council member means you're standing up a node that powers the network. All of them have taken a very close interest in use cases. We have this concept called special interest groups that our members are part of, and they join us, our team, and industry experts that could be dApps building on top of the network today, or others, academics that come, and we talk about use cases, we talk about what they're building. Many of our council members are in the process of building what will become very high profile proof of concepts that will eventually, assuming all plans go, according to plan, would be deployed on our mainnet, which is very exciting for us. As with anything with these enterprises, they certainly do not move as fast as, startups in the ecosystem. So we don't talk about these things publicly until we get PR approved. You can imagine with an enterprise, they want to control the messaging. They want to control the narrative of what this new platform that they're building will do. So our mandate as a team is we do enablement. We enable them. We teach them how to use our APIs. I have counterparts called developer advocates that are here. Guys like Ken Anderson on my team that are not just articulate individuals, but can actually write code and can help debug code and can show, hey, this is how you would use our APIs. This is how you would build. So the short answer is yes. lots of our council members are actually building. We are really excited to announce what some of those things that they're building are. And I think towards the end of this year and into the new year, you're really going to start to see true enterprise workloads come. I will just say though, Yonah, already we've only been live. You're actually catching us at an interesting time. We're about a month shy of being live in mainnet form, having our mainnet publicly available, openly accessible by everyone in the world. We already, according to, I think it was the third party data provider was a firm called Blocktivity. They've already ranked us as the 6th most utilized network in all of DLT. So we have fully deployed enterprise grade applications. The most exciting, or the one that I love the most, is a project called AdsDAX. They've literally, they had a pre-existing ad platform and they connected it to the Hedera mainnet to do, proof of, let's call it stamp out ad fraud. So proof of what ad was displayed at what time, make sure that there's no click frauds. As you know, that can be a big problem with all these Russian botnets floating around us all the time. So they're already deployed on their own, in doing 6 to 10 transactions per second. So, we're doing every day, we do over 1 million transactions on the mainnet. That is more, I will remind you, that's more than what the Ethereum network does today. And that's exciting for us only being a year old. I'm excited to think about where we'll be after 5 years as well.
So you're saying that right now there are currently use cases being active and transacted on the Hedera Hashgraph. That you don't have to say what, but there are companies that are using actual use cases. You said over 1 million transactions a day.
Oh, sure. So we can talk about use cases. I have to be more tighter-lipped on the use cases that are in development by our multi-billion-dollar multinational stakeholders.
Let's talk current. What's current use cases right now? What's
sure.
going on?
So we just talked about AdsDAX. That is absolutely, I think, one of the most exciting use cases out there. If you go to a page on our website called Hedera Hashgraph or hedera.com/users, we actually started to build. It's a really cool user directory that we started to build, where we're just listing. And keep in mind, the network is an open network, just like Ethereum is, just like Bitcoin is. So here's what's really interesting, Yonah. I talk to a lot of people every day that are building on our network. I'm surprised at least once a week by someone who's building on our network that I've never met and never talked to before and has never talked to someone on my team. We're a public distributed network in that sense. Anyone can go buy Hbar somewhere in the open market and start building. So I'll just remind you, it's the same concept of building on the Ethereum network or building on any of those other networks out there. That's pretty cool. But some of the other things that are built, there's a really cool company called Hashing Systems. I like this recently. They built something called Hbar. It's a wrapped Hbar. Think of it like you send your Hbar to it, and then you could go take your Hbar and go use it in DeFi applications. So, maybe go deposit it in Compound or go use it. Curve.fi is like the latest DeFi hype. You could go deposit it in like a DeFi pool and earn interest on your Hbar. So that's pretty cool. We have things like Armada that are, it's a collaborative supply chain. We have a really cool application called the Coupon Bureau. We did a lot of press with them. The Coupon Bureau does Providence. There's a lot of fraud in coupons. So think of it like this. Procter & Gamble issues a coupon. Walgreens redeems a lot of coupons. Walgreens is trusting Procter & Gamble to pay them. A $1 coupon is like an IOU from Procter & Gamble to the retailer. You get $1 off as the user of that coupon, but Walgreens is like, hey, Procter & Gamble, you owe me $1. Procter & Gamble's upset because there's a lot of fraudulent coupons floating around that they end up having to pay for. So Coupon Bureau has built a tool that will use the Hedera consensus service to stop ad fraud, which we think is really exciting. And I'm just trying to think if there's any others that I would highlight for you quickly. Yeah, this one's pretty recent and is exciting. Just to highlight the power of the network, there's a project called Tune.fm, which built a streaming service, a music streaming service. They use Jam tokens. Jam tokens is live on the Hedera network. And you can use Jam tokens in Tune.fm to stream your favorite song. Think of it like micropayments to listen to a Beyonce song. And that's really cool and really exciting. It definitely will disrupt the business models behind things like, Apple Music or Spotify or things of that nature. So the list goes on. There's dozens already. But those are the ones I'd highlight immediately for you.
For that music one, is the music actually stored on the Hashgraph or it's merely facilitating the payment of the artist to the listener?
So think of us as this in between what an organization's existing infrastructure could be and their users. You could use us for proof of action. You could use us as a microservice to say, Yonah clicked, logged into his Gmail account at this time, stored this amount of data there. You could also prove that Yonah deleted that data. And you could use us as this element of trust. We call ourselves the trust layer. But think about it if you were to put a little trust layer in between you and the web apps online that you use today. A lot of the problems on the internet have to deal with, oh my gosh, I stored all this data with this particular company. They didn't securely store it. It's all hacked. What we enable is, technically you can use it for regulatory tech or reg compliance with GDPR or with all of these. But no, you wouldn't actually store the music. What you would want to store, you'd store the music in your existing AWS database. What you would store is the action that Yonah clicked the music, streamed the music. The music's coming down from an off-network ledger. But we know that you clicked it. We know that you did it. We know that that was unique to you. Similar to the ad tech, you wouldn't actually store the full ad, like the size of the ad. That wouldn't be very efficient. You could store a file, a hash that references that ad and say it points to that ad. But we care about the action. We care about the in-app action. Again, to do tens of thousands of transactions, with the file size is small, which enables us to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned an important part, the trust layer, and this is something that's very one of the most powerful things about blockchains and any DLT, including Hashgraph, is that both sides don't have to trust each other. But with most blockchains and most blockchain transactions, the input, the output, it's all happening on the actual blockchain. Yep. When you're trying to be that intermediary, like you said, the trust layer between these two actions that are happening in the real world, that are happening offline. And you guys are that trust layer, it's fine. And there are many solutions to making sure that once the input's in, it doesn't get changed or manipulated to when it gets an output. But how do you make sure that input's secure?
So the way you look at it on the internet today is there's a lot of users inputting a lot of data into a lot of web apps. You've got and you're not going to be able to stop a user from inputting data the way certain, these apps are being built. Anyone can go to Twitter and tweet literally anything. So to prove that the authenticity of that data, we do less of that, although we do have companies building those things. There's a company called Acor that built a really cool coronavirus tracker on our network. What they did do is they did check third-party data sources to say, we have all the data you see in our coronavirus data tracker. We can attest to the provenance of that data. So they on their own are going to verify those third-party sources to say, yes, this case count is there. They offer that as a service. We do less of that. What we verify is that the event or the action happened. And again, it's not us. It's a database that's powered by all of these big companies. You're not just trusting Google here. You're trusting because a lot of people, let's be honest, don't. And there's a growing sentiment of distrust for these large organizations. So instead of just trusting one, you're putting a network together. Think of it like a multi-party, multi-master database where anyone can write to it, anyone can read to it, and we don't have to trust any one actor. The same concept that Bitcoin gave us, the same, I don't know you, you don't know me, but I can send you money from the other side of the planet, and I can trust that transaction is going to settle. And Visa, MasterCard, American Express, or PayPal, no one's in between. That's what the Hedera network exists to do. We just wanted to do it for more than just sending a Bitcoin. We wanted to do it for clicks and web apps. We wanted to do it for shared worlds. We wanted to do it for MMORPGs. And yes, you can power MMORPGs, massive multiplayer online games, through the Hedera network. So I think that's where the real excitement, this is really, the next wave of innovation for this technology, of course, very inspired by what Bitcoin, first enabled.
Well, you just mentioned that the opportunity for gaming. Do you guys have any gaming organizations currently as part of council members?
So we don't have any gaming companies as current council members. There have always been, we have lots of conversations with lots of prospective council members. There's literally not a company you could think of that we're not talking to or haven't talked to in the past. I think we've literally at some point had a conversation with, all the relevant Fortune 500s. And many of them are still ongoing active conversations. So it is very exciting, and gaming is an exciting part of that. I'll tell you what's really interesting in gaming just quickly. If you look at the shift of gaming and just how gaming started, where you'd go to a GameStop or you'd go to a store and you'd drop $20 to actually get a CD or some disc, and you'd come home and you'd play it. The shift in gaming is we've seen gaming get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper from the user perspective. And where gaming's probably going is it's actually going to become profitable for you. And I don't mean in the sense that you could become, Yonah, the latest esports player that is sponsored by Samsung, and, you're playing Fortnite and you're making a lot of money there. That's probably not where it's going, but you certainly can do that. There are professional gamers. I mean that you can actually monetize the in-game experience, and what we're most excited about is game companies that are exploring creating digital micro economies inside. There's a company out in Asia called Animoca Labs that has something called Sandbox now, and they're literally selling plots of land in the game. There's also tokens in the game. Growing up, my brother and I, we played a game called RuneScape, and we actually, against RuneScape's terms of service, we created a website called Rune Mint, where we would sell RuneScape gold points online. Of course, we got shut down within a few months. It was profitable while we were doing it. But if you think about what we were doing, we were monetizing the in-game experience, and the game developers were missing out on that. So game developers are waking up to what's happening there and are saying, hey, why don't we just turn our games into economies? Swords can be, on an exchange, can be transferred for gold points and back and forth. And, coins could actually be crypto, could actually be these tokens. When you conquer a fort, there could be an economic reward because behind that fort, there's a machine mining or doing proof of stake on the network. This is going to be really exciting. I'm excited about where gaming goes with DLT.
Well, we spoke about tokens and value of tokens. Let's talk about the Hbar token for a second.
Sure.
What is its use? What is its purpose?
Great question. So Hbar has a dual function. Okay, we are a proof of stake network. So the dual function of Hbar is to incentivize nodes to come on the network first and foremost. In a proof of stake network, the token is a security model, but you also want to incentivize nodes to contribute CPU, bandwidth, and storage to your network. And that's what Hbar does. Nodes are compensated as a function of how much Hbar they hold for contributing CPU, bandwidth, and storage to the network. On the other side, it's how you consume the services of the network. Yes, we do micropayments. Lots of people do micropayments today, but we also do micropayments. Yes, we do file storage. You wouldn't store a big file, but you could store a hash that points to a file. And that's important for a whole bunch of use cases. Yes, we have a smart contract service. And yes, we also have something that's unique to us and only us, which is this thing called Hedera Consensus Service, HCS. And it's raw Hashgraph powered by Hedera as a service. So you could send a whole bunch of arbitrary data to this Hedera Consensus Service and get back a fair order and a fair timestamp for what's sent at it. And again, this could power a Hyperledger Fabric network. This could power an R3 Corda network, with that Hbar. Hbar is how you pay for those services. You mentioned our fees. While our fees are denominated in US dollars, and intentionally so, that's so an enterprise can predictably price, hey, my bill this month is going to be $5,000. My bill is going to be $10,000. They know what they're going to spend on the network, but the amount in Hbar will be variable. So if Hbar goes to 10 cents, it costs them less in real Hbar terms, but their actual US dollar pricing, which is today how a lot of organizations pay their bills in US dollars, will be predictable for them. So that's the dual role of Hbar. And it's been exciting to see that the value of Hbar is really driven by the demand for the Hedera services, namely the Hedera Consensus Service. Yes, there's cryptocurrency speculation that's unavoidable in our industry. So that exists here as well. We do our best not to encourage it. But again, the long-term value of Hbar will be, the net new users of it, the value that those users hold in it, the staking that happens in the applications built on the network, but also the demand from large enterprises to consume the services of the network. And that is growing.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that Hbar is what powers and pays the nodes, and the nodes are run by these organizations. Is there a fear, or is there a danger that these organizations look at this and say, hey, we're the nodes, we're the consensus, we're going to prioritize our own transactions. We're let's say Google, for example, I'm just throwing out Google, not them. Let's make up a name, TimeBot. I don't know if that exists. TimeBot's a consensus organization for you guys, and they want to run their own transactions. So they start prioritizing their own transactions. Isn't there a danger here because of, you said, this unique connection to the real world and the fact that it's powered by big organizations that actually have uses for this hash graph? What's stopping these organizations and nodes from prioritizing their own transactions?
Great question. So the network today is powered by, think of it like the first shard. The first shard is powered by our governing council members. We did do a great webinar. It's called The Path to Decentralization. You can find it up on YouTube, and it actually has been a popular webinar where Dr. Hbar talks through how we scale from beyond just one shard. And again, you mentioned our throughput. We're doing a lot of transactions and we're throttled today. We've throttled our transactions down. We could do more than 10,000 TPS, but let's be honest, who needs that today? Very few organizations actually need that. So we're throttled down today, but we will move to a multi-sharded network. And in another shard, others can run nodes. One day you'll be able to run a node, Yonah. So I think it's got the same concept of, yes, today in Bitcoin is not fair in that a miner in Bitcoin can decide to put all of their transactions in a block, whereas that can't exist necessarily in other places. But yes, they can front run that block and put all their transactions there, and the other transactions get held out. You can manipulate the gas price to say, provide an economic incentive for your transactions to go into that block. With Hedera, we don't have the concept of a flexible gas price, and we don't have the concept of blocks. So transactions are sent to the network. It wouldn't really be, and I don't want to speak to something I'm not too in-depth and knowledgeable on. It's a fair question. My current understanding is it wouldn't be possible for the council members to front run in that way, but that's something I'm going to want to check on with Dr. Baird or someone on my engineering team to make sure even my understanding of it is accurate.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned either way, these 39, is it 39 council members?
It's 39 total with 15, so 39 seats with 15 that we've announced thus far. We'll be announcing more on a rolling basis, including, over the next couple weeks and months.
Right. So there's 39 council members. It's hard. It's by the bylaws of the LLP, they have to be out after 3 years, right?
6 years.
Right now,
after 6 years, 2 consecutive 3-year terms. Yep.
Why even break it up into 2? Why not just do 1 6-year term?
Well, let's say you got good question. What if you have a lame duck guy, right? So let's say you get, I don't want to pick who's a bad company we can gang up on right now.
Time Duck, make one up.
Time Duck Incorporated. Let's say Time Duck Incorporated comes and joins the organization and they don't show up to meetings. They don't build a use case. They're not actually using the network. The membership committee gets together and goes, these guys at Time Duck are not contributing. They're not voting. They're not building on the network. Let's replace them, and they'll vote them out. So that's the membership committee is there to protect from, lack of actual participation. And the number was small enough, intentionally so. We made the number small enough so that people would have an incentive to participate. Everyone can speak at council meetings. Everyone gets heard. Everyone wants to show up to special interest groups. It's really exciting. We don't have any lame duck council members today.
Mm-hmm. Well, right now, you said Hbar is what pays the nodes and these council members, and that's it. And so, right now, isn't it kind of like what happens with pre-mining back in the day, where right now all the Hbar is going to these organizations because they're the ones using it, they're the ones being paid in it. So even when they do get knocked out of their council seat, won't they have an outsized proportion of Hbar to actually stake?
It's a good question. So again, nodes are rewarded as a function of how much Hbar they hold. And Hedera has an unallocated treasury, quite a sizable unallocated treasury that is proxy staked. So what that means is you take the number of council members and you take the weight of the treasury, and we are proxying the voting power of the stake to each of those council nodes. They are not earning, they're earning minuscule amounts because the fees are so low and network utilization is only now scaling up very quickly. So they're not earning an outsized amount. It's not like front running or pre-mining in the same way. I read what happened on the Steam network in the early days where someone uploaded the contract early and front ran it and earned a bunch. That's not what's happening with the council members. There is still plenty of opportunity to capture plenty of Hbar at a very low cost. to be able to compete at that scale. That treasury will be distributed and decentralized throughout the network eventually, and those council members will, what little they are earning today. And again, it really is a minuscule amount. Think about it. It is. You mentioned the fee is 0.001, and Hbar is at 4 cents today, so it's a fraction of an Hbar that they're earning for every transaction that gets sent. They're really it's not a sizable amount that they're earning today. Again, that will change, that will increase when huge use cases get deployed that drive hundreds and eventually thousands of transactions per second.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's right now when you look at a traditional blockchain structure, one of the things that's stopping someone from just continuously forking off and trying to do their own thing is that no one's going to necessarily use the smaller, shorter fork. No one's going to, if I take Ethereum and I say, hey, I'm going to fork off from Ethereum, I'm going to call it Yonah Ethereum, and I'm going to do whatever I want with it. What's the problem is that there won't be any use case. No one's going to actually use it because there's no usability to it. But with these organizations, let's say now their 6-year term is up because they're not lame ducks like Time Duck, and they're out now, and they're looking at the Hedera Hashgraph, right? In 6 years, we're assuming Hedera Hashgraph, crazy volume, everyone's using it, and transaction fees are slightly higher or even a little bit higher. What's stopping these organizations, these original 39 big players, from saying, hey, we're just going to fork off from the Hedera. We're going to make it, we're going to call it Hedera Hashgraph, and we're going to be the organizations with none of these bylaws. We're going to be controlled all the time because we already built the use cases. They already have use cases for 6 years. They're doing transactions, but we don't need these bylaws. We're just going to use this Hedera Hashgraph.
Great question. So I'm going to compare this to, let's talk about Linux for a second. There's a kernel in Linux that only Linus from the Linux Foundation, the inventor, and a few guys can touch. No one else gets to touch the kernel. Okay, no one gets to send pull requests to it. No one gets to modify that. That's his thing. But everything else is open source. Everything else is open source, open license. Hashgraph, Hedera, we went after that same model. Everything that you use to build on top of the network, the services, I mentioned the Hedera consensus service. Our services are Apache 2 license open source, okay? But our kernel, which is consensus, and you don't need the consensus if you're building on the network, our consensus is open review. So you don't want people making API calls against a black box. You want them to be able to make API calls against something they can trust. You can see the source code. You can see the code on the network, and for the services, they are open source. So someone could take those services, but the core consensus, Hashgraph, is open review, which means you cannot fork the network. We have both the legal controls as well as the technical controls required. And when I say we, I mean the council to stop a platform fork. Why is that important? And by the way, there's some crypto anarchists who are watching this right now who are like, oh, kill Jordan. Oh, Hashgraph is the anti, crypto. No, we're realistic. I'm being realistic, and people are not going to like that. But let's be very direct, Yonah. When you bring a Fortune 500 company and they want to tokenize $20 billion of real estate, let's say all their corporate HQs around the world are sitting on $20 billion worth of land. Let's say it's like McDonald's. They are not going to tokenize that real estate on a platform that can be forked into overnight. They need guaranteed integrity of the mainnet. If you want enterprise adoption, real enterprise adoption of the network, you need 4 things. You need performance. We've got that. You need security. We've got that. So from a technical perspective, you're covered. But the other 2 things you need is they need to trust that there are adults in the room who are making decisions, and we've got that. And they need to trust that the stability, integrity of the mainnet is maintained. And we can guarantee that. All we're trying to do is bring the biggest companies in the world into a model. We believe in decentralization. We believe in the power of it, but you got to have a hybrid model. So we chose that. Again, it's not the pure open source for the kernel, but nor is the Linux kernel. And there's plenty of other examples where you can go into where, hey, only we can touch it. So that is what it is. Everyone can see it. Everyone can validate it. You can run audits on it. You can run peer reviews. You can run security checks on it. You're just not going to be able to fork it and go take it, or the council's probably coming after you.
Well, I'm impressed you had an answer for that, to be honest with you. I guess that's why you're here, and that's why you're in charge of speaking to people like me. But You mentioned upon it a little bit, but could you expand upon a little bit the idea about the consensus service and fair ordering?
Yeah. So the consensus service is really interesting, and it actually came from market feedback. So a lot of people let's just talk basic product development practice. A lot of people build what they want to build, and that's cool. And you get really cool, nice, shiny new toys to play with. But very few things, I think, in our industry are built after talking to a lot of people. I think one of the cool things about what we did is we went out into the market while we were recruiting the council, and we listened to enterprises. What are their business problems? And I mean, specifically, we spoke to line of business owners, people that manage supply chains, line of business owners that managed information security, CISOs inside of their organizations, line of business owners that would manage finance and various different business processes. And we understood what they were looking for. And when it came down to use cases, everyone was trying to fit blockchain use cases. There's the accusation, blockchain is a solution looking for problems, right? You know, you're a hammer looking for nails. We wanted to take the other approach where we found problems that people had to see if we could enable a feature set natively in the platform that would help solve that. And as it turns out, people really want raw consensus as a service. To give you a practical example, there are amazing software development kits in the market. I'm not going to tell you which ones are amazing, but let's just take two examples of ones that have been fairly well adopted. The private version of Ethereum, there's a version of Ethereum that's not the Ethereum mainnet that a lot of enterprises use. A lot of people who are part of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. You've got Quorum. Quorum is like what JP Morgan spent a lot of money trying to build. I think Consensus is now maintaining that now. You've got Hyperledger in the Fabric version, but there's lots of versions of Hyperledger through the Hyperledger Foundation. Of what we are members of the Hyperledger Foundation, by the way. And you've got like R3 Corda. You see a lot of enterprises building with those things. We thought, what if we could enable everyone to build and deploy those networks and use those software development kits? But the problem with deploying that is you have to stand up a consensus network. You kind of have to build a consortia. And we thought, what if you didn't have to build a consortia and governance for your use case? What if you could just take a toolkit and do a one-click deploy and make it function on top of the Hedera network? So we built plugins. We built a plugin to the Hyperledger Fabric repository that plugs into, you can literally strip the BS centralized consensus out of, it's like a raft consensus. It's like a leader sending transactions to like 3 different servers. What if you strip that out and replace it with Hashgraph consensus? This is the decentralized consensus on our mainnet right now, powered by the existing council members. And what if they use that? And people got really excited about that. And that's what we've been going to market with right now. But there's other things you can build with that. When you have fair order, you can build things like what AdStacks is using the Hedera consensus service to track, again, clicks or ad inventory. It can be used to decide the outcome of a battle in an MMORPG, like we talked about. It's being used to track provenance of coronavirus data. It's being used to do a whole number of different things, and that's really exciting. It can be used to prove that you're GDPR compliant or that you're compliant in California with CCPA. So getting that timestamp, getting that fair order is like having an audit to say, yes, don't trust me, Google, or don't trust me, Amazon, or don't trust me, Apple. I have a ledger that's maintained not by me, but by, this entire decentralized network and the ecosystem around it that says I did this or this happened at this time. It's a provable state proof. It's a great receipt to just, be able to prove that something did in fact happen. And you can do great things on it. You can build tokens on top of that thing. You can do really cool stuff. So the use cases are endless, and we think it's really powerful. And again, it's unique here. I've not seen anything else like that in the market.
Well, I mean, it really sounds like Hedera Hashgraph really has a lot going for it. And I come more from the blockchain background, so it's always exciting to hear about different things, hash graphs, tangles, all types of things. And I find it a little strange that you're being so successful with Hedera Hashgraph, but yet you founded CBDC.com. I'm confused why you decided to start selling CBD Center online, even though you have such a good job.
So I'll be clear. I'm an enthusiast. I'm a serial entrepreneur. And I wouldn't even call myself that. I have since as early as I can remember, I'm one of 10 kids. And, growing up in a middle-class family, the way I bought new shoes and fun things is I started businesses on the side. I have one of the use cases I've been most excited about since joining Hedera is I've been fortunate enough to get to sit down with central bankers. I've been fortunate enough to be on site at some central banks themselves and meet with the decision makers. And I find central bank digital currency fascinating. I think it would be one of the largest fiat to crypto on-ramps ever built. I mean, and I think everyone in this industry should embrace it. Is it technically new? No, we technically have digital dollars already. When you use Venmo, if I Venmo you right now, I'm technically sending you digital money. I mean, when money is deposited in a bank account, it's technically already digitized. And by the way, a lot of central bank digital currency is probably not going to have the features of a traditional cryptocurrency. It's probably not going to, be very decentralized. If I'm the Fed, I probably wouldn't decentralize it. But building it in certain ways, and there are a lot of smart people working on this, Giancarlo and some former folks from the CFTC. And so just some really exciting people behind a project called the Digital Dollar Foundation. We're part of the Digital Chamber of Commerce. So we've been privy to some of that, which has been really exciting. I saw a domain name. Some guy was selling a domain name. And when I talked to him, he had no idea what central bank digital currency was. And I'm like, holy cow, I'm going to pick this thing up. And this guy has no idea what it is. I made him an offer. He couldn't refuse, as the saying goes. And he sold it to me.
Well, yeah. When you have these discussions with these central bankers, one, are they considering doing it on Hedera Hashgraph? That's one, and two, has Hedera considered actually having governments on their governing council?
Good question. We have shied away from having governments for the time being, but that's not to say the council could change that. The council could very well say, again, it's not my decision. It would be done by a decentralized membership committee, which is the value of decentralized governance. And they could absolutely make the decision to allow governments. Today, we opted not to, but again, that could change. Something interesting happened in the council decided they would like to let NGOs, non-government organizations on the council, and academic institutions, which I was super surprised. I would not have guessed that they would have enabled that, but I really welcomed the change. So that enabled my team and I. We have a great guy in Hedera Business Development, Alex Godwin, who's been with us since the beginning. He built a great relationship with the University College of London, so they've joined. Yes, we have had conversations about central bank digital currencies existing on the Hedera network. We also have a lot of conversations about really popular stable coins existing on the Hedera network, and we're excited about all of the above. I think that this would be a great place to build a central bank digital currency. I think we could absolutely power it and enable it better than any other platform in the market today. I wouldn't still be here if I didn't believe that. And CBDC, when I had initially bought it, I thought, I don't really have the time to develop it, but I thought I want to blog about central bank digital currency here. I want to create information. So I thought maybe do that, but right now it's just a hold. Whatever I do, I assure you, it will be for the benefit of it, the Hedera Hashgraph and Hbar community. And that's where my heart is. And that's where my loyalties are. So yeah.
Well, if you're looking for a council member to sit on the CBDC.com council, I volunteer myself. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us today and really explain to us a little bit about maybe a little more unique side of the DLT technology that most people in blockchain don't really get to hear about or understand fully. So I appreciate you taking the time and kind of being also a friendly face to a lot of organizations that kind of don't really get to understand these big corporations. They don't really get to understand blockchain and DLT and decentralization in a proper way. So I do appreciate you taking the time. And for all our viewers for Reimagine 2020, I'm Yonah Hochhauser. Thanks for watching.